Demian brought the teacup to his lips as he suppressed a sigh. He was sitting at a tea table that had been set up in the gardens outside of his palace. Lady Viola Terrani, the young alpha daughter of Count Terrani, was sitting across from him. "It seems as if your highness has had a day," Lady Terrani commented. She was only there as a potential marriage partner. "Indeed. I have been preparing for my departure for Oakswood Academy," Prince Demian answered. Lady Terrani pursed her lips in displeasure at his mundane reply. "I hope your highness will have safe travels," she commented curtly. Prince Demian felt his hope wavering at the stilling conversation. He had been on several dates in the past few weeks on his parents' behest, and all of them had ended in disappointment. Once the date was over, Demian headed to his bedchambers and plopped down onto his bed. Was he childish for wanting a soul bond? A soul bond was rare, and it signified the finding of the perfect mate. He released a sigh. Just then, a servant knocked on his door to inform him that his parents wanted to see him. Both of his parents were already in the parlor room of the Queen's palace by the time he had arrived. His father, the king, looked over at him. "How was it?" the king asked. "She will make a fine spouse, just not for me," Demian answered. "Are you sure?" his mother asked. "It will be harder at the academy without a mate," she chided. His father released a sigh. "There is still hope. He may find a mate at the academy." Demian looked at both of his parents with complete confidence. "I have hope that I will find the perfect mate while I am there." The carriage pulled into the city. "I can't believe we are finally here," Prince Remington exclaimed. The young prince was excited that he will finally have the chance to meet his favorite character from a game that he used to play in his previous life. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet Prince Demian in the flesh, while having the chance to win the young alpha's heart. "I still don't understand why you are so excited about going to school," his personal Knight Dane muttered. "Because it's where it all begins," Prince Remington muttered quietly. "And I will finally be able to act as myself without all of the stuffy etiquette," he answered brightly. "Just try not to cause too much trouble. And please remember to find me if the suppressants no longer work," Dane warned the Omega Prince. A concerned look softened Dane's sharper features. "You're worse than father," Prince Remington commented with a Cheshire grin plastered on his handsome face. Dane's face paled. "Please do not compare me to the king." Before long, a cluster of buildings made of grey brick came into view. They had finally arrived at Oakswood Academy. Demian clutched the key to his dorm room in his hand. He had just exited out, the main building where new students had to check in, when he felt a body collide into him. His hand reflexively reached out and wrapped around a slender waist to steady the girl that had run into him. "Are you all right, miss?" Demian asked. A girl with aquamarine eyes looked up at him. "Sorry," the girl mumbled softly. "Oh no, I'm going to be late." The girl muttered off another apology before taking off, heading up the steps like a shaky fawn. A snort came from the bushes nearby. Demian found a boy with tan skin and hair the color of melted chocolate, watching him with an amused expression. The boy's pink eyes shimmered, and when he smiled he looked very much like a cat. Before Demian could stop him, the boy darted off. Demian found himself feeling stunned as he found it impossible that someone had such audacity. After getting settled into his dorm room, Demian headed off for the auditorium. By the time he and his servants had finished unpacking, it was time for the opening ceremony and the acceptance speech by the honored students selected to represent the incoming year. By the time he arrived, most of the seats were already filled. He quickly slid into an empty seat and patiently waited for the headmaster to take the stage and start the opening ceremony. He didn't have to wait long until Headmaster Arian bounced up the small staircase leading to the podium with a light step. The headmaster was a spray man in his 30s with long orangish-red hair that was tied loosely behind his back. His golden falcon-shaped eyes, narrowed as a mischievous smirk, spread across his thin lips. With his hands crossed behind his back and his long white robes billowing in the non-existent breeze, the headmaster began his speech. "Welcome to Oakswood Academy, first years." His soft voice was amplified by using wind magic. "This will mark the beginning of your 2 years here at the academy." The headmaster's voice droned on as he explained what their academy stood for and what they were expected to learn while there. "Without further ado, I welcome the student representative to the stage." The headmaster clapped his hands together. "Welcome to the stage, Remy Sato." The headmaster greeted the boy who walked up the stage. Demian felt his mouth twitch as he recognized the boy as the one that had been spying on him earlier. He then had another surprise when he recognized the name as one that belonged to the renowned researcher who had published many papers on secondary genders and had even released a few products to help with the pheromones caused by secondary genders. I had no clue that he was so young, Demian thought to himself, feeling drawn to Remy's vibrant pink eyes. Remy Sato could be described as being quite beautiful, which was surprising since it was widely known that the researcher was a beta. Demian felt himself sitting up straighter when he saw the smirk that appeared on Remy's face. From my fellow classmates' expressions, I can tell that many of you have read my past publications. I'm not the gray-haired old man you thought I would be, huh? His sudden joke caused many students to laugh out and for others to look around nervously. I would like to keep this short, Remy continued, no longer smirking, but still keeping a smile on his handsome face. I would first like to thank our headmaster for that riveting speech. He offered a small bow to the headmaster before continuing on. The only thing I want to say is this. We may be of different ranks and genders while hailing from various kingdoms, but we are all in this together. To some, Oakswood Academy offers a chance to shine brightly while preparing for the future, while others may think this the beginning of the end and are silently panicking on the inside. No matter who you are or what this journey entails for you, you are not alone. We are all in this together. Together, we will face this year through the boring times, the sad times, and the tough times. No matter what adventures blow our way, just remember that you are not alone, we are all in this together. We will make this journey a memorable and happy one. And I will leave my speech at that as to not put anyone to sleep. Applause erupted from all around them, and before Demian could even register what was happening, Remy Sato had been surrounded by a large group of people all vying for his attention. But before anyone had a chance to get too close to the young beta, a student who stood at a towering height and looked to belong to the same country as Remy materialized before him and acted as a bodyguard. Demian wanted to speak to Remy since he had avidly read a few of his publications, but decided against it. When Demian turned around, he noticed the girl he had bumped into earlier that day. She was standing near the back and her small, heart-shaped face was turned toward where Remy was standing. The expression she was wearing was strange and one where Demian couldn't quite name the emotions that were there. He removed his gaze and decided to retire back to his room. On the second day of classes, Demian had sword training, and he was looking forward to it. His swordsmanship class, like the other classes, was split between secondary genders. Oakswood Academy made it so that alphas and betas and omegas had classes together and forbade alphas and omegas from being in the same class. This was to keep any mistakes from happening in case any pheromones were to leak out accidentally, or if an alpha tried to attack an omega, or if an omega tried to attempt an alpha by using their pheromones. Demian made his way to the training field to find that he shared the class with Remy Sato and the guy who had acted as Remy's bodyguard. Remy was in the middle of removing his outer shirt when a smooth patch of skin caught Demian's eye. Demian averted his gaze, suddenly feeling flustered, and decided to change out of the outfit he was wearing. Once everyone was changed, and out on the field, their teacher walked up. Their teacher was burly and had a visible scar across his face. The man had everyone stand in front of a wooden dummy and instructed them to attack the dummy without using weapons or magic of any kind. Demian walked up and took his place in front of a training dummy. He noticed Remy sliding into place in front of the dummy, beside Demian's with a bounce in his step. And that other kid that was always with Remy slid on Remy's other side with a hard look on his face. Demian was starting to wonder if the two of them were more than friends. It's not like being with the same gender was uncommon, though with them both being betas, it was a little unusual, but nothing to bat an eye over. He chanced to look at the two of them again, and shook that silly thought out of his head. The beta with dark eyes, he really couldn't remember his name, treated Remy more like a younger brother that needed protecting or a young master he was serving. As soon as the whistle sounded, Demian cleared his head of all thoughts and threw a right punch at the dummy. The dummy, being enchanted with magic, threw a punch at Demian at the same time. Demian blocked the punch and swung his leg out to sweep the dummy off the ground. The dummy jumped to avoid the attack. After a while the whistle sounded once again to signal the end of class. After a small lecture, the teacher let the students go. Demian rushed to the showers, ready to get the sweat off of him. His alpha reflexes helped him get to the shower first. Yes. Remy's voice ranged out just as Demian entered one of the shower stalls. After the quickest scrub down he had ever had in his life, Demian towel-dried himself before getting dressed. He had been quick enough and smart enough to grab a towel and his school uniform before heading into the showers. It seemed that not everyone had the foresight to do so. A few of the students were walking out of the shower still soaked and stark naked. Remy had just exited out of the last shower stall. His sunset-colored eyes rounded and the tips of his ears flushed pink. The beta that was always with him threw a towel over top of his head before entering into the stall himself. Demian chuckled at the sight of Remy's hair after he struggled to pull the towel off. "Don't laugh at me," Remy huffed when he noticed Demian. "You have no clue of my struggles right now." Demian felt his muscles locking up as Remy's words hit him. Does that mean you'll get with a male Omega?" Demian asked. He didn't mean to voice his question out loud, but was unable to bite down on his curiosity. Remy's cheeks flushed a glorious shade of red. "No. Alvas." He mumbled his words so quietly that Demian could only pick out some of what he said with all the noise surrounding them. "What was that?" Demian asked the still blushing beta. Remy shot him a glare. How could this mischievous, bold boy be so shy when it came to certain things? "I said that I prefer alphas," Remy growled quietly. The beta that always stuck to Remy's side finished his shower just then. He glared at Demian after finding his friend looking like he did, which was like a cat with its hair sticking up and claws extended. Demian held his hands up in a sign of surrender. "I didn't do anything." The chuckle in his voice didn't help him any. The week had finally ended and the weekend was ushered in. Demian found himself sitting on a window seat in the library. He placed a hand on the book he had been reading and peered out the window. The sun shone brightly as its rays lingered on the students who were lounging out in the gardens. A familiar head of blonde hair caught Demian's attention. Outside, below in the garden, stood the girl he had bumped into. She leaned down to pick something up off the ground before climbing up the tree beside her. Demian's eyes narrowed when he caught sight of the bright, flaming red hair that could only belong to his childhood friend. Another one. Demian heard the squeal coming from the aisle beside him. He placed the book down before climbing out of his seat to investigate. "What are you doing?" Demian asked when he found Remy Sato looking out the window with a goofy grin. "Watching Ophelia," Remy answered without hesitation. Demian watched as Remy's back stiffened before Remy turned to face him with a surprised look on his delicate features. "What are you doing here?" Remy squeaked. "Studying unlike you," Demian answered with a smirk. "I was. Earlier," Remy huffed. He started hesitantly. "Did you happen to see that?" Demian cocked his head, taking a second to connect the name Ophelia to that blonde girl from earlier. "I did," Demian answered, watching as Remy visibly deflated. Demian's smirk widened. "You know, for someone who is into men, you seem to be awfully aware of that Ophelia girl," he teased the beta. Remy's face took on the expected shade of red that Demian was aiming for. "I'm not into her. Just watching her harem grow," Remy mumbled quietly. "Well, she's pretty and all the guys seem to flock to her," Remy muttered some more when he saw Demian's confused expression. It sounded as if Remy was just making excuses for his actions unless... Wait. He couldn't be. "Are you jealous?" Demian asked in surprise. Sure, Remy was a beta which limited his options since he was into men, but Demian could admit that the boy was attractive. Attractive and smart, which to Demian was a lethal combination. "No. Not yet," Remy's voice grew stronger with conviction and hopefully not ever. Remy's eyes flicked towards his. Demian sucked in a breath when he saw the morning light highlighting Remy's hair. Demian could pick out streaks of gold within its brown depths. Remy's pink eyes, which usually resembled the sunset on a summer's night, now shone like red jewels framed in large, thick lashes. "Ah, there you are." The voice came from behind Demian. Startled, he spun on his heels to find Dane holding a box of pastries. "Food is not allowed in here, so you'll have to eat them somewhere else," Dane told Remy as he deposited the sweet-smelling box into Remy's lap. "Thank you," Remy smiled. A weird stuffy feeling filled Demian's chest and his heart skipped a beat when he saw that smile. Demian turned on his heels and returned back to his seat. He quickly picked up the books he had been reading and headed towards the front desk to check them out. He needed as much distance as he could get between him and Remy. Demian had realized that he was attracted to Remy Sato. And Remy Sato was a beta. A male beta. There was no way his parents, the king and queen of Grove Kingdom, would allow their only son, the heir to the kingdom, to have a male beta as a mate. The second week of school came quickly as Demian kept his mind distracted from thoughts of Remy Sato. He found himself back in his swordsmanship class. The class today was similar to the one from the week before, but this time, they were allowed to use magic. Demian coated his fist with a thin layer of water. He punched the wooden dummy. At the same time, he allowed a few beads of water to morph into ice and inject them into the training dummy. Or at least tried to. The ice shards splintered off, but before they could pierce the dummy, a light sheen covered the wooden surface, protecting it from damage. Just as they could use magic, so could the dummies. Each training dummy was imbued with runes that allowed the dummies to use basic spells from 2 different elements. Demian's dummy was imbued with light and fire magic, the complete opposite to his magic, making it a difficult opponent. The dummy raised one wooden fist and cast off a small fireball. Demian dodged instead of using his magic. Demian moved in close and brought a low kick to the dummy's middle section. Right when his shoe made contact, the small bit of water on the bottom of it turned into ice and impaled itself into the dummy's side. This could only be done because the bead of water on his shoe was small enough to go unnoticed by the dummy's mana sensor, which every single training dummy possessed, to the annoyance of all the students. The whistle signaling the end of class sounded. God, I hate this class. Remy whined behind him, sweat dripping down his face. Demian had noticed that Remy seemed to possess less stamina and strength than most of the students here, and had been struggling with the class. Though the struggle was minimal since he could still keep up. I think I agree, Demian admitted. If the 2 of you spent less time studying and more time on physical exercise, then your opinions would be different. Dane spoke in a clucking tone. Monster, Remy mumbled darkly. Demian silently agreed with the sentiment. The students headed to the shower room after the professor had let them go. Demian was once again the first one there. The water poured down, relaxing his sore muscles. After he was dried and dressed, Demian exited the stall to find Remy standing impatiently off to the side, tapping his foot in annoyance. Finally, Remy exclaimed before darting into the shower that Demian had come out of. Demian caught a faint whiff of roses. The sweet smell made his senses tingle. Demian wondered if Remy was wearing some kind of cologne, since the pheromones of betas were too weak to even smell. Demian left the training field and headed to his next class. How dare you? The sharp voice caught his attention. How dare a hussy approach an engaged man? Curious, Demian stopped from climbing up the staircase and headed toward where the voice was coming from. He found 3 girls crowding around a familiar blonde-haired girl. He also recognized one other girl, easily identifying her as Shanna Bourgeois, the beta fiancée of Laxel, his childhood friend. I hate to interrupt, but may I ask what is going on here? Demian asked as he made his presence known. Lady Shanna was the first to catch her bearings as she offered him a curtsy and greeting. Greetings, Your Highness. I am sorry if I have disturbed you. Demian brushed off her greeting. Did something happen, Lady Bourgeois? He asked. Lady Shanna's eyes flickered. I received word from Laxel Rowenberg that he would like to break off our engagements. He stated that he had fallen in love with Ophelia Rosewood and would like to openly pursue her for her hand in marriage. Demian felt a headache growing. Laxel may have been a childhood friend, but Demian wasn't too particular about the guy since he was more brawn than brains. Ophelia turned wide eyes onto Demian. I had no idea, her voice was thick with unshed tears. I am only here to study and I would never do something so horrid as to take someone else's intended. Lady Shanna apologized to Lady Ophelia before her and the other girls left. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Lady Ophelia apologized to Demian. That is all right, Lady Ophelia. This seems to be Laxel's fault, not yours, Demian told her before leaving. He arrived to his class without being late. After the lecture ended an hour later, he left, only to run into Lady Ophelia. Lady Ophelia apologized to him once again before handing him a bag filled with homemade butter cookies. Demian took them, not having the heart of turning the gift down. As soon as the bag of cookies landed in his open palm, he heard a thud come from behind him. Demian turned around to find a gaping Remy. Remy's gaze looked broken as his eyes lingered on the bag of cookies in Demian's hand. Can't change fate, Remy muttered quietly before taking off. Dane, the beta that was always with Remy, followed after Remy's retreating form but not before he glared at Demian. Demian felt his heart contract. He had never seen Remy like that before. Albeit, he had only known the beta for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, Ophelia apologized, I've seemed to have caused trouble again. Demian left Ophelia behind and headed to his next class. He shared it with Remy, but the pretty beta boy refused to even look at him. When the day finally came to an end, he headed back to his dorm room. He shut the door before slumping down onto his bed. Why was his heart hurting? It ached every time he thought of Remy. Why did seeing Remy so despondent make him feel so miserable? What exactly did he do wrong, and why was he feeling this way? Those questions kept bouncing around in his head. Demian rolled over onto his stomach, not understanding why he had felt so drawn to Remy after just 2 weeks. He couldn't have fallen for the boy, could he? Was 2 weeks even long enough to fall for someone? Demian rolled again, feeling something dig into his leg. He sat up and pulled out a crushed bag of cookies from his pocket. He stared down at the broken crumbs, and before he knew it, he had reached into the bag and grabbed a piece, popping it into his mouth. His mind started to feel hazy as he chewed on the plain-tasting cookie. All thoughts of Remy began to disappear, and before long, Demian found himself falling asleep. Demian woke up the next morning with a pounding head and bleary eyes. He slowly got up and got ready for the day. He headed down to the main cafeteria to grab a bite to eat. Chatter filled his ears when he pushed open the doors to the cafeteria. As he filled his tray with food, the scent of lavender and moonflower filled his senses. He looked around, finding the source of the alluring smell. "Are you all right, Lord Demian?" Lady Ophelia asked, coming up to him with a concerned expression on his face. "Everything is fine, Ophelia," Demian answered the blonde Omega without realizing that he had used familiar speech with her. "That's good to hear," Ophelia smiled with relief. After Lady Ophelia had grabbed her own tray and filled it up with food, the two of them headed to an empty table. After they were done eating, they parted ways. He arrived to his politics class with a heavy heart. His heart suddenly constricted when his eyes landed on Remy. Noticing that Dane was nowhere to be found, Demian slid into the empty seat beside Remy. "Are you mad with me?" Demian asked Remy hesitantly. Remy looked at him out of the corner of his eyes and Demian felt his heart thump loudly against his chest. "No," Remy answered him. "I don't believe you," Demian said, challenging Remy's words. Remy released a sigh, drawing Demian's gaze to his plump, soft-looking lips. "I'm not mad at you. I'm just disappointed in myself." Demian felt his eyebrows furrow in confusion. "Why?" he found himself asking. Remy's Adam's apple bobbed as he refused to look at Demian. "I thought I could change fate," but couldn't his words confuse Demian, but before he could say anything, a shadow fell over him. He looked up to find Dane glaring down at him. Demian sighed before picking up his things and finding another seat to vacate into. The teacher came in after that and began the lecture. A few weeks had passed by after that. Demian found himself in the cafeteria with Laxel and Ophelia. The past few weeks have been strange. He had been strange. "I can't wait," Laxel exclaimed loudly. "I'm gonna bag so many, I'll be the envy of all." They have officially been enrolled in Oakswood Academy for 1 month and 2 weeks. That means that in 2 weeks it will be the hunting trip. The hunting trip was a special 2-day event where all students were forced to participate. It was performed in a group to test one's magical and physical strength. Ophelia giggled at Laxel's childish pantomime. And this was why the past few weeks have been strange to Demian. He had been hanging out with Ophelia and Laxel more and he couldn't understand why. The world was also hazy and it was hard for him to think. "Oh!" Ophelia exclaimed, a hand over her mouth. "I forgot I made these." She fished out 2 small pouches from her bag. Laxel perked up like an excited child. "Cookies. I love your baking, Ophelia." Ophelia giggled while she gave Laxel a pouch filled with butter cookies. She then turned to Demian and gave him one. Demian looked down at the bag. They weren't the best of cookies. Being a crown prince, Demian had tasted far superior delectables, but there was something about the ones Ophelia made. For being plain, they were addicting. They also strangely smelled like Ophelia's pheromones, which he had caught a whiff of on a few occasions. "Make sure you guys eat up. You both have training today, so you need your strength," Ophelia exclaimed with a smile. It was the one day a week that Demian always looked forward to. He didn't look forward to the day because of the class itself. He came to absolutely loathe sword training, but it was a class he shared with Remy. It wasn't his only class with Remy. He shared a total of 4 with the beta, but this one was different. It was the only one where he could see Remy running around, sweating and full of determination. It was also the only time when the world wasn't hazy to Demian. A long drawn-out sigh snapped Demian from his thoughts. The cheerful Ophelia now wore a forlorn expression as she stared out at the tables. The table that held her focus was one filled with a bunch of happily gossiping young ladies. And in the center of it, all were 2 betas, one looking as if he belonged and the other looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Demian felt his heart thump painfully against his chest. How was it that everyone else could easily talk to and eat with Remy, while Demian had a hard time getting just one sentence out? "Don't worry, Ophelia," Laxel comforted the little Omega. "They're just jealous." Demian happened to be looking at Ophelia out of the corner of his eyes and noticed the girl roll her eyes. Really, her voice was light and airy. I just hope we could be friends. Her sentence and tone of voice did not match the look she had worn earlier, the one she thought no one had seen. This was another thing that seemed stranger and bugged the hell out of him. Ophelia's words and facial expressions contradicted each other sometimes. If it wasn't for the fact that he for some odd reason felt drawn to her, he wouldn't have even bothered with getting close to her. Breakfast ended shortly after that and Demian darted off to his next class. He just needed to survive an hour before he could see Remy again. When the class finally ended, he bolted out of his seat and made his way to the training field. The locker room was filled with the other students. Remy and Dane strolled in after Demian, looking as if they weren't in a hurry. In fact, Remy was looking kind of sluggish and his skin seemed paler than usual. Remy. Demian cleared his throat. Remy paused in his action of sliding off the white-bottomed shirt. Demian clenched his hands into fists at his sides at the erotic picture that just a bare shoulder and neck could be. Are you feeling all right? Demian asked the sickly-looking beta. Remy's pinkish-orange orbs widened in mute surprise. Yeah, Remy finally managed to say, after wetting his bottom lip with his tongue, effectively drawing Demian's eyes to it. Just a little tired. Remy answered slowly, showing just how tired he was. Oh. Okay. Try to get some rest, when you can. Demian turned around and walked quickly out of the room, trying to hide his embarrassment. Why was it so hard to form a sentence? No, why was it so hard to not sound like an idiot? Demian thought to himself. The rest of the class filed out onto the field shortly after Demian. The professor, Mr. Ordish, was sitting on the ground cross-legged. His raggedy green hair hung long with the bangs thrown up in a loose tie and his face was riddled with scars. 5 kilometers, go. Mr. Ordish's rough voice barked out the command. Demian rolled up his sleeves and began running around the outer ring of the field at a steady pace. Curse that man. Remy's voice rang out like a clear bell among all the grumbling. Remy was the most vocal about his dislike for the class and Mr. Ordish, though he was never disciplined for it. In fact, Demian was pretty sure Mr. Ordish found Remy's complaining amusing. If Demian remembered correctly, Mr. Ordish was born in the Ashen Kingdom before becoming a traveling mercenary. Maybe he was easy on Remy because he and Dane were the only other ones in class that were from the Ashen Kingdom. Sweat rolled down Demian's temples and down his face before falling onto his collarbone. Running 5 kilometers wasn't easy, but it wasn't the worst outcome. They had to run 7 last week. Laxel, who was in their class, soon passed by Demian, followed by Ronnie, another alpha. Demian swiped the back of his hand across his face before pushing himself to go even faster. Physical activity would be a lot easier if he didn't have all of his restrictions, but that wasn't an option he ever wanted to take. Laxel and Dane were the first ones done with Demian, and Ronnie following close behind. Remy finished the laps third to last. He stumbled over to where everyone else was and collapsed down on the ground, rolling onto his back. Demian, deciding to try and get over this awkward stage with Remy, made a cup out of ice and filled it up with water. He made his way over to where Remy was laying down, Dane awkwardly fanning him. Here. Demian held the ice cup down toward Remy. Remy grabbed the cup, his fingers brushing against Demian's hand, and Demian swore Remy felt hotter than normal. Thanks. Remy sat up and took a long swig from the cup. After he was done, he ran the cup over his sweat-covered face with a sigh of relief. So handy, Remy mumbled happily. A tingle ran through Demian's body at seeing Remy rub something made from his magic over his body. Demian looked away, afraid that his emotions were written all over his face. Just then, Mr. Ordish called for everyone to gather. Thanks, I really needed that, Remy said, looking off towards the side as the 3 of them made their way over to where the teacher was standing. No problem. Demian was just happy that Remy was finally speaking more than 2 words to him. Listen up. Mr. Ordish's booming voice carried out through the training grounds. You'll be pairing up into teams for today's practice. Before Dane could do anything, Laxel came up behind him and slapped his back. Let's team up. You seem pretty monstrous for a beta. I can't wait to see for myself just how strong you are. Demian took his chance and wrapped an arm around Remy's slender shoulders. He decided to ignore the fact that Remy stiffened up under his touch. Wanna team up if that's alright with you? Remy hesitated. Yeah, that's fine. The 2 squared off against each other, taking on a defensive pose. As soon as the whistle blew, Remy lunged at him. They parried blows for a while before a mischievous glint made Remy's eyes flash a bright pink. Remy spun, swinging his foot low to sweep Demian off his feet. Demian saw it coming and jumped. Is that all you've got? He teased Remy in a playful voice. Remy snorted before lunging forward again. Demian blocked the attack while also using the same trick. He swept his leg underneath one of Remy's feet. And miscalculated. Demian lost his balance at the same time that Remy started falling backwards. The two of them landed in a heap on the dirt ground in a tangle of limbs. Remy wiggled underneath Demian, trying to break free. Sorry. Demian started to stand up when a deliciously sweet smell filled his senses. He found himself leaning closer to Remy's covered neck without even realizing it. The smell of roses and freshly cut grass greeted him. His nose slid along the smooth, unblemished skin. There was also the faint scent of sunlight and Remy's pheromones. If this were the beta's pheromones, then they were more addicting than any omegas. Demian felt Remy shivering below him. He knew it was extremely rude of him to smell another like this, but he just couldn't make himself stop. A rough hand wrapped around his shoulder and pulled him up, startling Demian out of his delirium. Mr. Willie, take Mr. Sato back to his room. Mr. Ordash's voice felt like it was going to break Demian's eardrum. Remy was still laying on the ground, his skin was flushed, red and sweat was soaking through his outfit. His eyes were closed and his breathing was heavy. Dane put down his practice sword and rushed over to Remy's side. He wrapped one arm around Remy's shoulders and another under his legs. Remy let out a small whimper at being moved. Demian's heart plummeted. Shouldn't he go to the infirmary? He wasn't feeling well earlier either. Demian's worry seeped into his voice. Nah, Mr. Ordish answered Demian. As you said, it seemed as if he wasn't feeling well. The poor boy is probably coming down with a cold. Demian decided to pick up a fever-reducing potion for Remy after class. Has a Remy Sato or Dane Willie stopped by here? Demian asks the nurse after class ended. The nurse shook her head. You're the first person I've seen all day. Demian shuffled his feet. Is there any way I can get a fever reducer? My friend was supposed to come by and grab one, but it looks like he didn't. The nurse got up from her seat while cursing out the instructor who hadn't sent the student to her. She picked up a vial with a blue-colored liquid in it. Give this to your friend. Demian thanked her while taking the potion. He made his way to Remy's dorm. He entered the building and found a few students in the lounge area. Do any of you know which room Remy Sato is staying in? Once he found out the room number, he headed towards the staircase and walked up to the second floor. He knocked on the door. The door opened just a fraction and beady black eyes peered out between the crack. What? Dane's tone was sharp and curt. Demian's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Wasn't this Remy's room? Demian held up the potion. A fever reducer for Remy. Dane eyed the bottle like it was some foreign creature before snaking a hand out through the crack to take it. I'll let him know you came by, Dane said, surprisingly a little nicer. A sweet and fragrant scent assaulted Demian's nose just then. His hackles rose as he realized it was Remy's scent: roses, freshly cut grass, and sunshine. Why does it smell like him? Demian growled. Pheromones this strong could only be smelled during heats, ruts, and sex. And since Remy was neither an alpha nor an omega, that meant he had sex. And the only other person in the room was Dane. Dane glared at Demian. None of your business. His tone was completely rude. He then shut the door in Demian's face. Demian felt himself backing up until his back hit the wall. Was it really true? Was his first assumption right? Were Dane and Remy really a thing? Demian's heart clenched and his fingers shook. That realization was extremely painful and one he had never wanted to come across.